can't, then oh well. And what you see is what you get. But anyway. I wish that they would explain in a little bit more detail how things can happen like this, where the nodes are in a certain sign, but then something happens and eclipse happens and signs the nodes are not. One of those astrologers has explained the reason why this happens. I am not going to dig through the files and abuse content to find one answer. I just don't want to do that. I don't know. This is my whole spiel on that. Now, getting to this article, which you've been awaiting. I know. Okay. Here it goes. The Colorado River is running dry, but nobody wants to talk about the mud. By Dale Maharich. Interesting name. He's a professor at Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism. This was written really recently, so the information can be really, looked at. March 20th this year. So, here's what it says. There's another good reason to say goodbye to Lake Powell, as it has shrunk. Various side canyons of Glen Canyon are no longer underwater, and willows and cottonwoods are sprouting in their banks. Narrow and twisting slick rock tributary canyons with grottos, soaring amphitheaters, and hidden passages are reappearing, like the images in The Place No One Knew, a Sierra Club book featuring, I made that mistake intentionally. It wasn't a mistake. And then it makes sense. Featuring Elliot Porter's Requiem photographs of pre-dam Glen Canyon. That Glen Canyon, a thriving place of beauty and life, is the one I want back. In 1969, when I was in the 7th grade in suburban Cleveland, a man gave me Porter's book. It haunted me. In 1976, I took a Greyhound to Utah and went on a month-long vision quest, backpacking parallel with the new reservoir, still 40 vertical feet from full. I witnessed remnants of some of the Eden Lake canyons photographed by Porter before they were submerged. In 1983, when I camped on the shore of the lake next to Dave Foreman, a founder of Earth First, he'd come to protect the 20th anniversary celebration of the dam. We spent the night drinking from a case of beer. 2 years earlier, Earth First activists unfurled a 300-foot sheet of plastic over the face of the dam, simulating a crack. The lake seemed very permanent. It was brimming full. It was shocking in 2005 when I drove to an overlook and saw the water gone from the upper reaches of Lake Powell. Little snow had fallen in winter in the mountains to feed the lake. I then did something I never thought possible in my lifetime. I swam the Colorado in Upper One Canyon. Because the lake had shrunk, it was a spot that had been some 100 feet underwater for decades, now exposed again to sunlight. After crossing a vast mud flat, I bobbed downstream and then slipped and fell in muck on the way back to my clothes. It wasn't a pleasant experience, yet the swim had to be done. The lake soon reflooded the site after a while. What I didn't realize in 2005, the river was flowing over a mud glacier that was 140 feet above the original channel. I swam over a mass of mud, biblical in scale. River raft guides were among the first people to pay attention to the delta. As the reservoir level dropped, ugly, gooey mud flats were exposed, making camping difficult. It was a wasteland that wasn't safe to step on, said Mike DeHoff, a semi-retired river guide whose boat shop in Mo, Utah had become a command center for studying the sediment. But as the deposits flushed downstream, the banks became inviting places to pitch tents, and the once buried rapids of Cataract Canyon began re-emerging. Mr. DeHoff wondered when other rapids would come back. In 2019, he began agitating for someone to examine the mud, and with some friends, formed the nonprofit Returning Rapids Project. One of its first moves was to take a group of scientists on raft trips to study the sediment. The river by then had knifed into the delta, leaving towering escarpments of loose packed soil. On one excursion, they named it the Domini Formation, after the former Bureau Commissioner. Mr. DeHoff, who says it's ridiculous that someone in his position should rank as an authority on the subject, describes the mud as a massive byproduct of our appetite for water that no one wants to pay attention to. Who manages it? And what the heck are we going to do? The Returning Rapids Project placed cameras to film the erosion, making time-lapse images. One December afternoon in his shop, with a strong river guide coffee made on a portable propane burner, Mr. DeHoff showed me sped-up videos of slabs of settlement calving off and crashing into the river to be carried away to the reservoir. Mr. DeHoff noted the Bureau of Reclamation regularly monitors sediment in the early years of the reservoir, but it stopped in the wet years in the 1980s, saying it would take 7 centuries for Lake Powell to fill with soil. For the Bureau, the sediment had become a problem they would like to ignore, said Eric Balkin, the executive director of the Glen Canyon Institute. Its core mission is to see Lake Powell emptied and Lake Mead kept as full as possible. No one knows for certain the entire lifespan of Lake Powell, given the twin crises of climate change and water demand. One scientist I spoke to gives it a century. Mr. Balkin is more pessimistic, saying it's probably measured in a matter of decades. But today, no one expects Lake Powell to ever again be full. Like a martini glass, the lake takes exponentially more water to raise the level the higher you go. The most unhinged mud glacier threatening Lake Powell is astonishingly fast and has moved 7 miles in a year. It is on the San Juan River, a tributary that begins in Colorado and flows west across the Navajo Nation, eventually joining Lake Powell. It carries less water but proportionally a higher sediment load than the Colorado. More of a river of literal mud, said Carl Johnson. a University of Utah geology and geophysics professor. Picking an exact date for when the San Juan mud plug travels the final 20 plus miles to Glen Canyon is in the realm of a wager for Las Vegas bookies. It will certainly someday arrive. Wind depends entirely on snow and rainfall in the Colorado River wasteland and how much water is used. When it reached Glen Canyon, it could clog the deep and narrow channel a few dozen miles uplake from the dam and halve or slow the flow of the Colorado, making management of the river difficult. This could disrupt water delivery to millions of people in cities and towns, as well as farmers and tribal communities downstream. Mr. DeHoff thinks the nutrient-rich sediment should be allowed to pass through a decommissioned Glen Canyon dam onto Lake Mead, where it could be shipped to farmers in places like California's Imperial Valley. Jack Schmidt, the director of the Center for Colorado River Studies at Utah State University, warns this is impossible, given the volume of mud. His solution? Move the sediment farther downriver. That will be very expensive in the tens of billions of dollars. Moving sediment through the dams involved dredging or piping sand and mud long distances, and the dam itself would have to be redesigned to allow silt to pass through. If Powell is drained, this kind of engineering will be essential. Without it, Lake Mead will start filling up with sediment, eventually becoming useless, with mud eventually replacing all the water behind the Hoover Dam. But there's plenty of time to save the plant. And even if it takes 50 to 100 years for the mud to become a serious problem, Dr. Schmidt thinks Glen Canyon Dam will eventually have to be re-engineered anyway. That natural sediment load cannot be blocked from the sea forever. For now, the Bureau of Reclamation isn't commenting on draining Lake Powell. Its priority appears to be generating electricity from the dam. But there are other options for making clean power. The cost of the solar and wind power has plunged. The Bureau's study said renewable energy is scalable, with the caveat that this is not Reclamation's expertise. It does have the expertise to decommission Glen Canyon Dam today and begin studying how to move sediment downriver through the dams. It will take years to carry out any plan. It's a house of cards, Dr. Schmidt said of the sediment. He added that the only certainty is that when the day of reckoning comes, it will cost a lot. And in the meantime, he said, it's not wise to keep both Mead and Powell less than half full. Lake Powell, I believe, is the one that should be drained, and then Glen Canyon should be declared a national park. It was the most beautiful stretch of the Colorado River, and if we allow nature to do its work, the entire canyon will return to what it looked like in Porter's book. Now, there's a lot, obviously, to break down with that. But now we're going to look at what he did with the whole point of this is. Let me just tell you, in all honesty. I'm going to use his name because I've used it before with courage and confidence. But I don't want to say his name. I just don't want to say his name. I just don't. I don't know. I don't want it to be that revealing. I'm not limiting myself. I just don't want it to be that revealing. So I'm choosing to not say his name. My composition teacher has almost zero enthusiasm for the assignments that we do for the class. It's one thing to, oh, I grew up in the 80s. I understand what it's like. All this technology, all these kind of things. So, I'm going to give you this assignment. And I talk about it substantially, but then you just hit a wall. And then you want to find something with substance. That's what I feel. I mean, there are other things I could be using my time with right now. Maybe my brain is not meant or built for analysis like this. I mean, I could barely do the work for the intro to lit class. Oh my goodness. It was during that Mars retrograde in Gemini that I had that intro to lit class. I had analyzed poems. I had, oh my goodness. You've not heard all of it. We are all going to clean off and pay off karmic debt. Here's what this means. I think at this point, almost not a day goes by that I do not sit in the feeling of regret for that one assignment I had to rush through on 11/21/22. Oh my gosh. Here's what I regret. Here's what I would do differently. I would have the courage and the tenacity and the will to say, guess what? This is going to ruin my evening. I am getting stressed out over this. This is ruining my peace. This is short notice. I just found out about this assignment, and I want to do well. I want to put the quality into it, but I can't do it if it's a deadline, and I'm stressed, and I'm going to be rushed, and I'm going to be pressured. So guess what? I am going to release my attachment to this assignment and be okay with not getting it done. Be okay with losing points. At this point, if that were to happen again, guess what? I would be okay with it. I would be okay with it. I've learned the hard way. I was sitting in that classroom on that Monday before Thanksgiving break. It was, the middle of the day. I was sitting in that classroom, my intro to lit classroom, and I heard her talk about there is an assignment today, November 21st. That makes a negative resemblance to an astrologer saying, there's an eclipse on the 20th. Guess what? No, there isn't. When I hear that, how come I don't believe it? How come I don't want to believe it? Oh yeah, that matters. If you hear something and you do not want to believe it, that matters. Because now you have a truth that's different. But the choice point is, are you willing to follow your own truth or go along with the crowd and choose to bow down and bend over backwards for that apparent truth? I mean, what do you choose? obviously I made the wrong choice. After that class was over, my brain became inflamed. Inflamed. I could not think straight. I was not thinking clearly. I was fixed and I was determined to just rush and get it done. Okay, oh my goodness. The sun and the moon was in Scorpio. Mars was retrograde in Gemini, squaring Neptune in Pisces. Come on. Now, Gemini rules your mind, and Mars is action. So it was a real look at what propels you mentally to take action. And why do you keep doing these things? Why do you keep doing these things that piss yourself off, that tick you off? Why do you keep giving in to the same patterns that don't serve you? Why do you keep checking yourself when you know that you're okay? And not drop in enough and not feel those feelings enough. Mars retrograde in Gemini. It's fine if you can take your time. It's fine if you can slow down. I think that it was really only very loud when I was stressed and pressured, and I had an assignment for an intro to lit class where I had to focus and get my brain in a seat and do the work and analyze. A lot of work. You can have the motivation to get done. Not that work. No, not that work. I mean, you had to be in the mindset to enjoy the process, and I would not let myself. I made up my mind. I am not going to allow myself to surrender and accept the notion that I may have to sacrifice my evening and my time because of this assignment that came up, that it was so sudden and so unexpected. That was too hard to swallow. I could not swallow it. I could not handle it. I could not just choose humility. My brain was fired up. If I had this assignment in the past and I could do it beforehand, and I could say, psychic medium said, okay, you are going to be stressed on this day because of this. Well, okay, now that I know that, and guess what? I can change that. Put in that situation again, I could change it. But guess what? I would not just slow down and get it done. No. Because, I just couldn't do that. And that was so obvious. I mean, I could have done it, and I knew that in my brain. I knew that I could get it done, and I could slow down. But I didn't do it. I didn't do it because it was just something just coming at me all of a sudden. And now, on the fly, I'm supposed to do something about it. I was not prepared for that. So I just could not get myself into a situation where I could slow down because my ego was just inferno. It was just like, you know, the sun was at anoretic degree of Scorpio. Signs of not Taurus, slow and steady, taking your time. Scorpio is intense and just want to, destroy things to get a goal accomplished, and it wants transformation, destruction, wants, something with intensity. That's what Scorpio wants. 29th degree is really intense and volatile, and my goodness, if I come home cramming to get an assignment done on the day of the new moon in Aries at 29 degrees of the sign, that may be a time where I can redeem myself and say, I'm going to be honest, I am not in the frame of mind to do this. I'm not going to even try. I'm going to come back to it tomorrow when I can focus, and I can be present, and I can slow down, and I can take time, and I can enjoy the process of it, because that work was no joke. It was no joke. I mean, if it was, taking notes on this section of a textbook, okay, that does not require a whole lot of analysis, interpretation, etc. But the work that I had to do for that intro look class did. It was not easy. It was just not the work to do if you felt like you wanted to get something done. Because obviously, if you're so stressed out and you want to get it done, that's the attitude you have. And it makes the process of that way less enjoyable. And then you're rushing, and then you're stressed, and then you're, because it's not moving fast enough, you're not finding the answers, just do it a certain amount of time. Really, I was just, logic left the building and my soul and spirit left the building. My ego took a bad pill or something. It was drunk, or it took I don't know, trying to just on steroids, kind of thing like that. I don't know. Metaphor. I was on steroids, or I was, hyped up and, pressured and stressed. That's how I was feeling, pressured and stressed. And mac and cheese will be served at the dinner tonight, which is the very same thing I had when I was stress eating to get that assignment done. I just want to get it done. That work that I had to do really comes down to, guess what? Both the journey and the getting it done. But if you are rushing the process, that's going to only take you so far, and you are going to make it really difficult for yourself and dig yourself a hole. And now I regret it. I regret that. And I am not going to have that happen again. Mars was retrograde. I will blame it on that. When Mars is retrograde, you're probably going to end up doing something that you regret. Or be more attuned to the things that you do that you regret, because it's not functioning properly if you're Mars is retrograde. Or shutting down its power, or more negative look to it. I mean, my sun's in Aries, ruled by Mars, so I have Mars in Gemini, so I'm not going to say that it didn't impact me. I'm going to say that it did impact me. So it did impact me. And, know thyself. Anything that costs you your peace is too expensive. The only thing I didn't do, I didn't apply that. Should have just relaxed my brain, done other things. I didn't. Because of the pressure. Oh, you're not going to get it done. You're going to get bad grades. You're going to lose points. It's going to look bad. Oh, the things. Guess what? You have got to be willing to do what is right for you and rise above all of that and learn to detach and lose attachment to this needing to be a certain way, to this assignment getting done a certain way at a certain time. That's the attachment. I was attached to that, and it was really unhealthy, and it did not serve me. Recognize when something does not serve you and when it does, and you will know. You will know. That did not serve me. I like this. This is going well. I'm getting it done. This is working out. That was not working out. And I tortured myself to get that assignment done. This one teacher who was just really tough on people to get it done before spring break. That is not the reality. And you may view yourself as being really in the moment with all those intense emotions. Do not allow yourself to be taken in and swept up into that so that it causes